Welcome to the From Survivor to Thriver podcast. I'm Mark Fernandez. Each week, along with my co-host Eric DeRosa, we aim to shatter the stigma around mental health conversations through kitchen table conversations with real and relatable people, all the while reminding our audience that they are not alone. There is hope, there is help, and there is a way through. Enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to From Survivor to Thriver, episode 78. This is Mark Fernandez. As we were just chatting in our pre-call, it's been a wild week or two in all of our lives and in the world, and it just reminds me to be grateful for the things that we all have and can do. Also, a reminder that, we got to check in with ourselves and everyone else. So we kind of just did that in the pre-call, and I really appreciate that. My co-host, Eric DeRosa, joining me from across the creek. Eric, how are we today?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. Before we go into that, speaking of checking in with people, I was texting, as I'm sure you were, with a bunch of our friends in Highland Park last night. It was an incredibly unfortunate incident, and I found out when I got back from a weekend away of racing. And unfortunately, the madness in this country continues. So, much love to all of our Highland Park friends and family. But yeah, the fourth weekend was really fun. I was over in Breckenridge racing. My first time. There's a pretty popular mountain bike race called the Firecracker 50. And I did it as a relay, as I'm doing nowadays. And it was with one of the amazing women who I had coached and worked with last year in Sacred Cycle. And it was her first long race of over 3 hours and a lot of fun. And as I mentioned in the pre-call, for some reason, I tend to enjoy racing and battering my body up in the dizzying heights of 11,000 plus feet. And it was fun. It rained. It was like all the things, and I get to catch up with a lot of the bike racing community that I've come to know over the last 10 or 11 years out here, and some who I haven't seen in a while. It was really a lot of fun, and happy to be back and looking forward to my next adventure at the end of the month. How are you? I know there was a little excitement on your end.
I'm doing well. And in response to my earlier statement of, trying to be as forthright and be real about it without going too deep into the story, because the story is actually not that important, but I left a pot on the stove and I turned my house into the worst smoker in history. So we're trying to do some smoke remediation on our own. Luckily, I know a great guy who's an awesome carpet and upholstery cleaner that's going to come over and help us. And to be honest, compared to what could have happened, it is a blessing, to be honest. It's perfect. We all still have houses. I didn't burn down a bunch of things or my neighbors' homes. And an important lesson. And honestly, from a mental health perspective, it was a perfect example of trying to do too many things at once. We all think we can do that all the time. Science has told us you can't multitask one at a time, people. And I am often guilty of it. And this time, luckily, I was lucky, but there were some consequences, and maybe I'll learn the lesson. But to be honest, I probably won't.
Nope. Because you were toggling, Mark.
I was toggling. Toggling.
Yep.
But before we get to our guest, quickly, I'm going to do this real fast. We're only going to do a sports figure today because it is a step out. It's usually my favorite athlete, right, that wears this number. And you're going to remember this, so this is going to make you laugh. There are many great players, especially in the NFL, who wore the number 78 for our episode 78 here. But this guy, I hated this guy. He played for the Buffalo Bills. And he was nasty. And I'm using that word in the best way. And his name was Bruce Smith.
Bruce Smith.
He was a defensive end. Yeah, see, I was like, who I'm talking about. And he was a beast. Now, all reports and things I've learned, he's actually kind of a great dude. So, now here we are. He's retired for a long time. I'm now talking about him on a podcast. And so we're going to say, hey, but on the football field, that guy wreaked havoc, and he was such a great player. So yeah, that's all I'm going to do on the number 78 though. If you are interested in the rock history, 78 was a great year. Go ahead and look at those albums. It was pretty cool. And the numerology, it's actually, I don't know if it's just that number 7 is so strong. It's still all about determination, focus, right? The second number in the 70s doesn't seem that important.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Bruce Smith.
Yeah, beast. He's a beast.
Remember him well. But enough of us. Joining us today is Anissa Hudak. Her life has been intertwined with PTSD, trauma, and the military. Not only is she the daughter of a Vietnam veteran, but she was also married to an active duty member and Iraq and Afghanistan veteran for over 20 years. After seeing others struggle and having her own personal struggles with trauma and PTSD, she was inspired to create the Trauma Healing Yoga Therapy Program. As a yoga therapist and founder of the Trauma Healing Yoga Therapy Program, she guides others in the use of effective, science-based yoga therapy and other holistic techniques for the management and healing of symptoms relating to PTSD and trauma for people who want to control their PTSD, not allow it to control them. Most recently, she has focused her efforts towards working with women who have been sexually traumatized to help them heal their PTSD and other trauma-related issues with yoga therapy. As a survivor herself, she intimately understands the needs these women face and helps them navigate their healing journeys. With that, let's welcome in Anissa. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me on.
Reading your bio and having raced this weekend, I'm involved, as our audience knows, with a program here in Colorado called Sacred Cycle. And it's all about healing female sexual survivors of trauma through mountain biking and community. And so I sit on the board of that organization and I've coached for that organization. And now women who have come through that program and who are interested in exploring mountain bike racing, I do these fun events like yesterday where I team up and we do a relay. So it's really powerful.
Fabulous. Before we jump in, though, I have to say the Buffalo Bills aren't really a real team. I mean, that's Canada. Okay. As a true New Yorker, I have to say that
shit. You're just going full on upstate New York isn't even part of the country anymore. You're saying
no, everything from like Albany up is all Canada.
I'm so glad you're saying that. Only a native New Yorker can pull that shit. You know, us guys that lived in Boston and then moved to New York, we can't say shit like that, but you can.
You can.
So if we're going to talk about a player with a number 78, let's talk about a real team.
The Patriots?
Oh, bloody hell, no.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. Who do you want to talk about with 78?
Giants.
Yeah, which player?
The only real team that there is out there.
Which player?
That would be Andrew Thomas.
Andrew Thomas was a good player. He was not Bruce Smith good. I'm sorry, honey. You can take away their citizenship, and you can't take away how good Bruce Smith was.
That's right.
I will drink to that.
Yes.
I'm fine with that part. And it's tough right now because the Bills last year clearly were better than the Pats and kicked our ass in the playoffs. I wish we could get rid of them right now. And
how'd the Giants do in the playoffs?
Well, I haven't been in the playoffs in a while. Although
that's right.
You know, the last time they made any noise, I was at that game. And,
I know. Yeah. When you catch a ball off a helmet and, you know.
Well, no, not that one. I was at the one where Brady threw the safety on the first play of the game. All right. So we've just lopped off a piece of the United States and given it
I
back
think
to
you're
Canada.
you're feeling bitterness over Air Canada. So I feel
exactly.
if I take this a step further, you have a strong dislike for everything north of Albany and the state of New York.
She's not even just lopping it off. She's punishing them. She's like, you know what you should do? You should be sent somewhere and then they should take all your luggage.
I mean, I'm thinking like the only good things to come out of Canada were like the Great Big Sea Group and poutine.
You know, like the Bare Naked Ladies?
We'll take them and we'll take, oh God, what's that actor? He's hot. Shit, what's his name?
It's your favorite, Mark?
The actor.
Ryan Reynolds.
Thank you.
I don't think of him as hot. I think of him as funny.
It's funny.
That person's straight, right?
Alanis Morissette.
We'll take
Wayne Gretzky.
One of our guests.
Mark Messier, Sidney Crosby.
One of our wonderful guests. Please remind me, the musician Hutchinson.
Yes. Yeah. No, we've had a ton.
We've had a lot of Canadians.
We've had a lot of Canadians.
To all of our Canadian guests, remember, they're not our opinions. These are all
These are our guest opinions.
Like they've all come down here, and there's a reason for that.
I love it.
The NHL. They came down for the NHL.
Well, I mean, look, a Canadian team hasn't won the cup since '93. So
that's true. To all of our Canadian friends,
we still love you.
We're sorry.
We love you. Come down here.
That's
Don't try to fly Air Canada down.
This will get me in trouble, but I will tell you, and I'm on the record having had said this many, many times. Being a Massachusetts person, I am respected as a card-carrying masshole, but my favorite massholes are the ones that have left. They can go back, but you got to leave for a little while. And I think that's important, thinking about it, kind of turning it around into this mental health perspective and having listened to Anissa's bio. One of the things that I finally learned about yoga and that connection in mind and body, because I'll be honest, I was resistant to yoga for a long time. I hated it. I did not enjoy it. I didn't find any of the benefits. I actually am on the record of having said yoga stresses me out. And I found out it's because I don't like being in a classroom with a bunch of other people because, I just want to be able to fart and roll. But so when I finally discovered video yoga and was able to make that mind and body connection, one of the things that I didn't ever give myself time for or understand was the reflective piece. And I'm just wondering, because I know it is, but from your perspective, how important is it to have that mind, body, and breath connection and then be able to allow yourself to have those moments of reflection and peace, whether you could push yourself towards meditation or you really actively have to be in there with, whatever voice decides to pop up in your head at that time. Thinking about it for me, I've seen so much of a benefit in my own life, but it's never the same, which, and that's why I'm interested to hear your perspective.
So mind, body, breath. When you're first starting out, it's really hard to connect the three of them in a really graceful way. I kind of strive, if we could get one thing present during the class, that's great. I don't think on any given day, anyone has all three going for them at the same time, maybe, but probably not the whole hour. And that's okay, because we're humans. We strive for that, especially with folks who have PTSD or trauma-related issues. That's a really big ask.
And I'll tell you, I think what's so important about what you just said is part of what stressed me out was I was coming at it of like that athletic sort of performance aspect of like, well, I'm supposed to be doing these things, so it should work. In that classroom setting, I felt like maybe it was my own sort of bullshit showing up, but I felt this pressure to like make it work. And I'm sure my instructors said it, but to hear you say like, hey, good luck. We're just, here we go. We're going to give this a shot. And I'd be like, it doesn't work. I can't touch my fucking toes.
It's the point is not touching your toes. It's the journey down. Let's back the train up. There's two different types of yoga out there, right? We think of yoga as a big pie. We split it down the middle. And on one half, you've got fitness-based yoga. And you've got your Ashtanga and your Bikram and your, co-ed, naked, hot yoga and aerial yoga and all that kind of crap, all that stuff. And that's great. It meets the need for people. You're going to get some great strength training, stamina, all kinds of wonderful things. And the instructors there, generally speaking, are very knowledgeable at what they do. Now, on the other side, we have yoga therapy, which is what I do. And we have yoga therapy for, cardiac rehab, cancer, MS, Parkinson's, PTSD. And we have a totally different idea of what we're doing. We're there to help you meet your needs and to help you either rehab from something, manage symptoms, potentially heal. So we come about it in a very different way. If you're in a fitness-based class, they want you to bring on the fitness, be there, do it all. However, in my class, you showed up. Woohoo, gold star. All right, now let's move on. You breathe. All right, 2 gold stars. And we celebrate those things because for folks who have PTSD, especially debilitating PTSD, those things need to be celebrated because how often are they doing it? How often are they in the present moment? If they have depression, they're in their past. If they've got anxiety, they're in the future. When are they ever present? And so just getting them present, which is hard because, if you're doing yoga, you got to be present or else you're going to fall over. So you got to be present. Getting them just to be present and then to take a breath and feel into their body. Oh my goodness. You would think what you were having them do. But that's really what yoga is with, for PTSD is really helping them to connect the body and the brain again, to be present and to just breathe. Not have stillness, because for a lot of people, stillness is a really, really scary place. That's where the scary shit is.
Yeah, and I still struggle with that.
I love how you describe it because we do with Sacred Cycle, we do trauma-informed yoga, which I'm sure is part and parcel of what you're doing in some ways. But to use your phrase, let's back the train up even further. So before you even began your own journey into trauma-informed yoga and became a teacher and a practitioner, there was trauma and PTSD in your life, PTSD in my life. So for me, it's the anxiety and OCD manifestations of PTSD. Let's talk a little bit about where your trauma PTSD came from and how it manifested itself.
Okay, so my life sounds like a really bad Hallmark movie, except for my dog didn't die and I didn't lose my job. I was raised with my father is a non-vet. He had PTSD, and so in living with that kind of a situation, unbeknownst to me, I got to know PTSD very intimately. At that point, at 18, I was raped for the first time, and I did what everybody tells you to do here in the West. I went and I saw a therapist. At the time, I did not go on meds, but I did see a therapist and I talked it out. And then every couple of years, I wound up having to go back and see a therapist and unpack it again and talk about it again. And my husband was active duty. We moved around the country, and it seemed like every time we went to a new base, every 3 years or so, I was talking to a new therapist about the same shit. And I felt like I was on this hamster wheel. Eventually, I was put on meds, which I'm very grateful for. But again, I'm still doing all of the Western stuff, talk therapy and meds. Okay. And then I discovered yoga. And at first it was fitness-based for me. I decided, kind of like Mark, I didn't want to go to anybody else's class. I didn't want to be on anybody's schedule. So I'm going to take a teacher training class to keep myself safe, do my own thing. And within a month of me finishing my first class, I had 2 job offers. And I thought, I think the universe is trying to tell me something.
Well, and could you listen? Because sometimes, the story doesn't just lay out like that, right? Like, were you at a place at that point where you're like, oh, this makes sense, I can continue this right then and there?
Yeah, I was. Awesome. I was coming off of a really bad year. I had lost 3 jobs.
Oh, wow.
And after the last...
So you had lost your job. It was a country song. The dog was alive and nobody stole your truck, but it was a bit of a country song.
Yes, it was a bit of a country song. Absolutely. And I literally laid on the couch and cried for 6 weeks. And then I heard that there was going to be this yoga training in my town. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go do it. Just for giggles, just for myself. I'm just going to get myself off the damn couch and I'm just going to go. And that's really what kind of woke me up and said, I love yoga. Yoga is this amazing gift to me. And it wasn't about teaching it. It was about sharing this gift. And what yoga has turned into is my lifeline.
How did you know? Obviously, there was a huge piece of healing in this for you. And that's what you're sharing with the world is what I'm hearing. But especially when you talk to people who survive trauma, unfortunately, a ton of people I'm super close with, and including myself, have gone through a lot of shit. So it's so hard times to even know. You're like, oh, it feels good. It's like, okay, well, is this the addiction? Is this Eric going out and, self-destroying himself on his bike in a healthy way versus an unhealthy way? Because it can kind of show up either way. How did you sort of sort out that, like, not only was the path sort of being laid out in front of you, but it was such an important part of your healing journey? What was that, like, aha moment or series of moments of, this is why this is here for me. This is what's going to make me more whole again.
I know that during those 6 weeks that I laid on the couch and boo-hooing and pity partying, I kept saying, what is the meaning of my life? Like, what am I here to do? My kids are a little bit older. It's not like I'm, getting juice boxes and cutting up chicken nuggets. They don't really need me that much.
They can eat their chicken nuggets whole now.
Yeah, they can do for themselves. My husband's career was at a point where I wasn't really necessary to be hands-on involved in it. He was still active duty military. And so what is there for me? What is my purpose in life? That kind of a thing. Where am I supposed to go to next? Blah, 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 blah. And, poor me. And then I just know that, I started the class. I went the first day. I realized everybody was like a whole generation and a half younger than me. And they moved a whole lot quicker. I got home that night from the Saturday, and I looked at my husband. I said, I'm not going back. Fuck it. I don't care about the money. I'm not going back. He said, no, I'll sleep on it. We'll see how you feel in the morning. I'm like, no, I'm not going back. Fuck, I'm not going back. And I got up the next morning and he said, well, and I said, I'm not going. He goes, no, screw you. You're going.
Huh?
I said, but I didn't do my homework. He goes, you'll figure it out. You're always good on the fly anyway. Just go. So I went, and it was my turn to present my homework, which I had none of. And so this really lovely, lovely lady in my group said, it's right here in the book. All you got to do is read. You can read. I know that. So I read it out of the book, and halfway through, I started crying. And she's sitting there smiling like a Cheshire cat. And after I got done, I said, why are you smiling? She said, because this is you. You like this. Go ahead, admit it. You like it. I said, yeah, I really do. She said, you more than like it, don't you? I said, yeah, okay.
Did she ever tell you what she thought or saw? Like what? No, she just
knew.
Yeah.
She just knew. She just knew. And she said, what is yoga to you? And I said, well, it's a gift. And she said, so go share the gift.
What's so interesting about even how you get into yoga is this whole idea of, you're traveling around, seeing other therapists, and continuously rehashing that same story. And I'm wondering for you if it's the same and similar as it is for other people, that you're actually not only recounting that same story, but as you recount that same story, you're going through that trauma again. And so did it actually make it worse for you each time you had to share that? And then finally, when you found yoga, it was a place where you no longer had to share that story. It was a chance for you to finally start healing in a much different way.
It was because as I would go from therapist to therapist, it was generally because something else had opened up to me. Another, peel of the onion had been exposed, and I needed to go address it. And it's this whole layering thing with PTSD. When I finally got on my mat doesn't care. My mat is like a free therapist. There's no judgments, totally confidential. It's always with me. I can always sit down and talk to my mat. And for me, because I'm from New York, they don't talk back. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, I have the unfortunate situation where the voices in my head talk back. And, and that's where it gets a little weird on the mat for me sometimes.
Yeah, I understand.
And if you tell the mat to fuck off, it's not going to tell you to fuck off.
But I think that's the thing that people don't understand sometimes about like the East Coast mentality of vented rage. Part of it is we crave that interaction. No, fuck you. Nah, fuck you. We good. Yeah. And they're like, wait, what just happened? It's like, well, we were having an argument and we're both, we're over it now. And that's how it works. If you're wondering, if you're from way up north, way down south, or way out west, and you don't understand that, I just told you.
Yeah, the folks out here in Kansas don't understand that. Like,
no, and it's
they fuck you. They're like, oh,
they're like, you just cursed my grandmother. I'm like, your grandmother's probably cool and thinks you're a shithead too.
And that just totally throws them when you say shit like that. It just, God bless them.
And I've been out here long enough that I have softened, but it still shows up. So here you are. You show up on the mat. The mat doesn't talk back. You're in this class, and whether or not you can feel, and that's what I love about this part of the story, because there is still, and I am the most resistant person to healing sometimes, there is still some resistance. You haven't bought the farm yet. You're just like driving the tractor around the outside.
This is true. I was dating it. I hadn't married it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and not exclusive dating. Like there might have been.
No, I was looking around all over. But yes.
So what made you be like, okay, get rid of the side pieces. This is the main attraction.
Well, I started teaching, and I taught for a couple of months, and I was like, damn, I really kind of like this. And I decided to start taking some more teacher training classes to give myself some flexibility as to what I could offer and what have you. And I kind of got the bug. And I was going through a company called Yoga Fit. They are an incredible company for education. They started offering courses called warrior classes, and they were for PTSD. It was designed by someone in the military, for military, active and retired. And I was like, okay, I'm married to an active duty guy. We live outside of Fort Riley, Kansas. We have folks coming and going on deployments. We've got, a huge retirement community. We have got a WTB here at Fort Riley, which is a Warrior Transition Battalion, where all of the sick and injured soldiers go to be rehabbed or medically discharged. I said, I live in the belly of the beast. I should take these classes and bring them back to my community. I was about halfway through the first day and I said, oh, fuck. The first person I got to work on is right here. And I started to understand and learn.
And it happened that quickly. You were like, oh, that's why. Okay, cool.
Oh, it was like the light bulb went off.
The chandelier.
I had the oddest look on my face. And my teacher at one point looked at me and said, are you okay? What's the matter? And I said, oh, you have no idea what's going on here. Just keep talking. Yep. You know what I mean? And so I started this journey of self-discovery, self-healing. And then I was able to, help people as well. But it was a journey. What was really profound about it was the science behind it. When I learned the science behind what was happening, and I said, oh, shit, I do that. Oh, shit, I do that too. Oh, I know somebody who does that. Okay. And so once I started really understanding all of this, all of the dots started to get connected. Oh, I remember my dad doing that. Oh, I remember this happening. Oh, that explains that. It was like somebody turned on a light in my life.
Were you able to, and I know this happened for me, it's happened for Mark, it's happened for others. So all the work that you had done prior to your yoga, right? So you were peeling the onion and you had uncovered certain things. That day when you were in your yoga training and the light bulbs started going off, it sounds like that was the first time you were really able to take all of those things that you might have unearthed, but actually be able to start putting the puzzle together through yoga and through movement and taking it out of just a discussion. And as you were saying, this mind, body, breath connection. Is that a pretty accurate way to think about it?
Absolutely. I was able to take what I knew was scientifically happening with my body. And I realized I had options. I didn't have to react. I could respond instead of react. I could work that trauma out of my body. And it was just so amazing that I could feel so free on the mat. And that freeness would follow me off the mat. The flexibility that I found on the mat would follow me off the mat. And all of a sudden, I started living my yoga.
Two things I want you to unpack, and I'll repeat them because I'm obviously really good at layered multi-questions. The first bit is there's a reason why they call it a practice, right? And so this reflective period and how it fit together is so important. And I would love to hear more about that. But in sort of conjunction with that, you just spoke about something that's very important to me and has been a huge part of my own personal journey. And it's something I actually try to teach and train in a lot of different ways. And what to you is the difference between a response versus a reaction?
I love this question. Oh, I love this. When you react, you don't think. It is like somebody, it's when the doctor hits your knee and it jumps. Mm-hmm. That is a reaction. You do not think, you just move. A response is when you're able to take a step back, take a breath, and think about how you want to move forward.
The thing that I think is most important about that is I talk a lot about the lizard brain, right? We talk a lot about the flee, fight, flight reaction, right? Like all the different ways this can happen. And I think, actually, I don't think, I know, even if you just give yourself permission to pause, right? You might still react. Your response and your reaction might be similar, but at least you then have an understanding or confidence of like, nope, that's how I'm, no, fuck you, that I do actually think you should fuck right off. Versus if you just yell fuck off and there isn't that moment, now you're like, oh, maybe I should have asked them a question or, and I think, there's so many ways that therapists or different people talk about it. And I'm not trying to say one's better than the other, but the clearest way for me is, once the thing's put in the world, do you still want it there? Yeah, right. And to me, even notwithstanding, we all make mistakes and things don't come out the way we want. But most of the time, if I have a moment and respond versus react, I'm okay with that living in the world. Way too often in my life, though, when I've let my reaction just go, those are the regrets.
So let's back the train up and look at it from a scientific point of view. Folks with PTSD, we live in our reptilian brain, which is, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. takes care of our breathing, our blinking when we need to go to the bathroom, right? There is no emotional regulation going on there. That happens in the upper echelon brain where we're trying to get back to. However, we're not living it because we are living with PTSD. So the emotional regulation is offline for the most part. This is why you're reacting as opposed to responding. This is why people have the violent mood swings, the anger management issues. Why? Because their emotional regulation is totally offline. And so if we can just pause, take that breath, our reaction might be the same as a response, and you're absolutely correct. However, we've taken a moment, we've taken a breath. Hopefully we thought a little bit about it. And just in that thinking about it, you have gone back up into the upper echelon brain. Response might be the same, fuck you. And that's okay. But at least it's a response and not a reaction.
And so as you're saying that, I'm thinking moving it from the scientific cognitive side and moving it to, let's call it the somatic side, the energy healing side. I feel like what we're discussing is a reaction is an ungrounded response, whereas a response is grounded, right? So we take that breath, we ground ourselves, then we make an informed comment or a decision. And it sounds like you do that through yoga, I do it through Reiki, or Mark and I do it through skiing, like just finding that grounding mechanism to give us the opportunity to, like you were saying, to pause and then open our mouths and let whatever is going to come out.
And the great thing about yoga is that there is so much breathing involved that kind of once you're into the practice and you're into the breathing, it kind of almost becomes second nature. And so you can kind of, you almost teach yourself to take that pause so you don't have to react. Also, too, your bandwidth is much greater because of the yoga.
That's the other little hidden bit of it, right? And I want to tease this out because we've kind of oversimplified it. It's like, oh, if you just take a moment, everything will be fine. And it's like, no, because in taking that moment, you gain access. And you said this earlier, Anissa, and I would love to hear more of what you think about it, because that term bandwidth or whatever you want, but it allows you access, freedom to the rest of your brain and body, right? Like that's what's really important. I really wish everybody could see this video right now and watching you guys literally nod in unison and not a neck nod. The whole, like the chest.
The whole body, yes.
I know most people just listen, so I just had to say that. It's beautiful, but because that's really the core of it, right? Like it's easier. And Eric, I appreciate the question so much because like the science is important. And for someone who's as literal and sort of like down the line as I am, I need to know that there's the science that supports it. But for most people, they're like, okay, great. So I take a minute, I take a breath. I still tell someone to fuck off. How did I get any better? And it's like, well, there was confidence in telling them to fuck off. You knew that you took the time and it's what you really wanted to say. And so you can walk away from that without the anxiety loop or the depression loop of living in the past and the future because you were in the moment, you thought about it, and then you said it. And then the bandwidth and the freedom of like, I lived that as an emotional creature, not as a lizard. If anybody's wondering, we're not making this up. The amygdala is basically the reptile brain and we still have it. And if you own one of these reptiles, that's all they have. Just remember that. But yeah, no, I would love to hear how you can talk about your students if it's easier that way, or even your own personal journey of like how you came to the understanding of like how this allowed you so much more access and range within your own life, emotions, and personality.
Okay, so let's take this from a scientific standpoint. What we're able to do with the yoga therapy is you hold on to trauma on a cellular level in your body. Every cell of your body holds it. However, there are certain muscle groups that hold more than others. And we're able to really work those muscle groups to exhaustion. Now, I'm going to take a side note here. Have you guys ever seen two dogs fight?
No, I've seen cats fight.
Like really fight or like just play fight? Yeah, I've seen both. Yeah.
Okay. So after they fight and they walk away from one another, what do? Have you ever seen them shake?
Yep.
Okay. So what they're doing is they are resetting their central nervous system. They went into fight, flight, freeze.
Yep.
And now they're resetting the central nervous system so they can go back up into their very small upper echelon brain, right? Same thing with us. If we have a traumatic incident, We need to shake to reset the central nervous system. Now, as humans, we hate to see people shaking. What do we want to do? Oh, come here, let me hold you, let me strap you to a board, all that kind of stuff. We need to shake. If we don't shake, that's where the PTSD comes involved. So we are able to, in yoga therapy, really work those muscle groups to the point of exhaustion. And guess what they start to do? Shake.
Yeah, the tremble.
And so, if you've ever, gone to the gym, it's arms day, your arms feel like jelly. Maybe it's squat day. Your thighs are like jelly. This is what I'm talking about, that shaking. That is helping to reset the central nervous system. It is helping the person get back up into the upper echelon brain. In the meantime, it's releasing baggage and emotion and all kinds of shit they don't need to be carrying. Hence, giving them more bandwidth, giving them more freedom, giving them more emotional regulation. And it just gives them more room to literally put their armor back on, go back out into the world, and they have a little bit more room to deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally.
Not only does it make sense, it actually goes back to our earlier conversation about Eric destroying himself on the bike. You want to talk about shakes? Like 9-10% incline grade at 11,000 feet? Like, I don't care how fit you are, everything's going to be shaking.
Well, speaking of that, I had a really interesting experience yesterday. So this was the first time that I have actually raced since my fall winter episode, and where I was really starting to work on, cognitive behavioral therapy, Reiki, mindfulness, and meditation, all resulting in being in the now. And in the past, whenever I used to race, there'd be points in the race where I would say to myself, I'm never doing this event again. I can't believe how much I hurt. Like, this is like, what is going on?
Which, by the way, seems like a very normal reaction.
Yeah.
But
my legs would usually be on fire, and I'd be like, yeah, just ease up right here for a little bit. And then yesterday, at various points, I found myself just super present with the bike. And I actually, like, as much as it hurt at times, I smiled. I would pass other people and I'd congratulate them. And it was a whole different experience. And when I got to the finish line, Amy said to me, she had said to my teammate who had finished before, she goes, watch, he's going to come across the finish line. I've seen this before. He's going to lay down. He's going to be totally exhausted. He's going to say, I can't believe how hard that was. I'm never doing that again. And then by the time we get home, he's going to say, so I crossed the finish line, and yes, I was exhausted, but the first thing out of my mouth was, that was so much fun. And it's reminding me of yoga with you, Anissa, where I was really present that whole time. I experienced it. And yes, there were times when my legs were shaking. There were times when I was, so deep into we call it the pain cave, but so deep into the exertion that I could have backed it off at any time, but I really wanted to feel it. I wanted to be in it. And I kept saying to myself, like, I will get through this. I'll come out the other side. The finish, I got another hour. And, as my coach likes to say, you can do anything for a minute. You can do anything for, 30 minutes if you put your mind to it. So yeah, it was such a different experience for me. And I can see how for you with yoga and with your students who you're doing this with, you can really get into the present and you can feel that release of trauma, but at the same time, you start to feel the dopamine, right? And all the other good sensations coming into your body if you not only allow them to, but you embrace them.
So I have a question. You can both answer this, but we're going to start with our guest because she's more important. So hearing what Eric just said, for the moment, he knows how much I love and treasure him. He won't think of it that way. We have the science. You've talked about it beautifully. Eric, I think, just talked about it beautifully. But how do you think in the long term, right? Because there are successes and failings in this. Overall, what are the best ways? Because you said something before about living your yoga outside, right? Not just on the mat. And Eric learning this lesson on the bike and taking it back to life. And I think this is really tantamount to our whole goal here of this idea of moving from survivor to thriver. How do we sort of shorten the loop or keep that so those behaviors are the more prevalent ones. And I know practice and doing it is part of it, but looking at it from your own perspective, Anissa, and then what you've seen in your students' lives, like how do we stay there? How do we spend more time in that zone versus out of it?
Yoga, yoga, yoga.
Or bike.
Or bike. Yoga is kind of like chiropractic care. The more you do it, the longer it lasts.
Wow.
Get on your mat.
Be one with the mat as well.
My mat is my best friend. I actually at one point had surgery and I took my mat with me. And my husband was like, why are you taking that? You're not going to get on your mat for at least 6 more weeks. I said, I know, but I'm like Linus. Like, I have to have my mat with me.
And what if you needed it? Even just to lay on it, right? Yeah, it's there. And I do think it's important, right? Like, you talk about Linus and anyone, I guess, who's probably grown up in the US for the past 50 years has that immediate image of the blanket being dragged behind. And I wonder, at times, we don't want crutches necessarily, right? We don't want something that helps us and we keep it to a point where it doesn't, right? Because that can happen. But the security and sense of love and self-care that exhibits for you, is so important. And what other ways or what other things do you think, like yoga? Obviously, we've talked about a lot of different ways it is, but what other things do you find in your life that informs and that you can find those little anchors in the storm, so to speak, through that?
I would say I love to have a cup of tea. For me, a cup of tea is a hug and a mug. It is 5 minutes of just pure joy. People talk about having their coffee stations. I have a tea station in my house. I probably have close to 70 loose leaf teas. It brings me joy. I go to tea festivals. I'm that big of a nerd.
And it makes sense, though, the ritual of it, right? If anybody's ever seen a Japanese tea ceremony and making loose, and if anybody doesn't realize, not all tea comes in a bag.
That's right.
Some of the really great ones do. That's not what I'm saying. It's just the idea of making loose leaf tea with, water in a pot, and it makes sense. I'll be honest, for me, it is often actually my morning cup of coffee or actually my dog walk. That's a moment where it's just me and Chewy tooling around. And sometimes I don't want to do it. And I'm like, the weather this, or I've got these other things to do. But then I find myself 6 minutes into it, staring at a tree, being like, oh God, it's nice out here today, even though it's raining or whatever, and it's so important.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle.
But I want to go back to that yoga mat thing for a second, because my brain,
what's your blanket? What's your blanket? What's your blankie?
It's got 2 wheels.
I'm looking over at it right now, and it is so filthy.
I was going to say it needs a wash. That shit needs a wash, brother.
3 hours in the mud yesterday, but I couldn't have been smiling anymore. Because my teammate went, and it was sunny and it was beautiful. And then when I started, it was raining, and it took me right back to racing cyclocross. And I was like a little kid, but I just kept telling myself, when you drop down into these giant puddles, close your mouth, because Giardia is not fun. But the whole yoga mat thing, as I'm hearing you talk about it, kind of go into that slightly existential place, right? For you, the yoga mat, like my bike or like your tea, like Mark's skis, it transcends just being a yoga mat. It's part of your healing team, right? And I think what's important is we always talk about healing teams and we talk about them in terms of people around us. But in some ways, there's also inanimate objects. For you, it's the yoga mat. For me, it's the bike. For Mark, it's the skis, or for both of us, it's the guitar. That's part of our healing team that we need to have with us. And so sometimes people use security blanket as a misnomer. It's not really a security blanket, but it's something that allows us to feel more comfortable, more safe and secure, especially anyone who's experienced PTSD. That's a big issue, is the safety and security piece.
Absolutely. And in fact, some people, when I talk about my mat, they look at me and they say, you talk about it as if it's a person. I'm like, yeah, I have a relationship with it. It's my everything. And, I wash it. I want it to look good. I want it to feel good. I want it to last, because I certainly don't want a new one, because it's been through so much with me. And yeah, it is. I talk to it. It hears me moan and groan and piss and moan. I mean,
it absorbs your sweat. It's funny because like I hear you talk about it a bit like it's outside of you, but I also can hear some of the things you say where it's like it is part of you and that practice and that healing journey.
Yeah, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mat. I would not be here.
Does it have a name? All of my bikes have been named in the past. So all my bikes have names.
It's really funny that you say that because you both have mentioned the voices in your heads.
Yeah. Because
I have this incredible peer/mentor, and we were in a class and she was talking about the voice in her head, and she's named that voice in her head. So the voice in her head is named Lucinda. And she says, whenever I hear Lucinda, I tell her, shut the fuck up, Lucinda. You don't know what you're talking about.
That is so healthy and beautiful.
I love this.
Yeah,
so
it's brilliant.
I welcome you guys to name the voices in your head.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when you need to shut them up, you can address them appropriately.
I love that. And I do a similar thing when it comes to bikes. When I'm coaching people, my current bike, it's named Blue Eyes. I'm not going to go into the whole detail of why, but when I'm with other people, one of the first things we do is I was like, have you ever come up with a name for your bike? And they're like, no, that sounds crazy. And I'm like, no, but if you think about it, if it just goes from being this inanimate object and suddenly it has a name, and now you become kind of one with that bike, it completely and totally changes your relationship with riding. And like with your yoga mat, with your friend naming Lucinda, the voices in your head, it suddenly is like something that you can talk to and be like, okay, not today, Lucinda. Or in my case, like Blue Eyes, like we got another hour, like just shut up and let's do it. And suddenly, yeah, it's a whole different kind of a relationship.
It is. And, I don't have a name for my mat. I look at
it's
it.
Matt.
M-A-T-T.
M-A-T-T.
Matt the Matt.
Not short for Matthew, just Matt. I'm sorry, the joke was in my head the whole time he was talking. And now he needs to learn Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain by Willie Nelson. You have to learn how to play that.
I know the song. I'm going to have to learn how to play it.
Well, because as you were saying it, and I didn't put it together because I heard you refer to the bike that way, but I'm picturing you yesterday in the mud at Breck, and I'm like, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. Look at that.
Blue Eyes wasn't crying. I was crying.
You don't know that. She has feelings too. Anissa, it is such a wonderful and valuable lesson, and I cannot thank you enough for sharing it with us. I'm so glad you found it and it's always interesting to me how these podcasts will evolve because we spent so much time talking about you thriving and we didn't talk much about you surviving. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm okay with it because those things happen, but that's not what defines you now. Matt helps to
Matt the Matt. MTM.
And it's so important.
So one of the things I want to hear too is for our audience members who are listening, I know there are lots of audience members, PTSD, depression, anxiety, OCD. So we were talking about naming your voices. What are some of the things you would say to them, recommend to them who may be on their couch like you were for 6 weeks, unable to get up, who may still be in that phase of talking through their trauma, to be able to go from kind of that surviving mode into the thriving mode that you found with yoga?
One of the first things I would say is get up and go for a walk. Just move. I know you don't feel like it. I get it. Do it anyway. Move. Get up and go for a walk. And if you have a dog, take the dog with you. If you don't, that's okay. Just go for a walk. I'm partial to yoga. Obviously, Eric likes his bikes. It doesn't always have to be yoga. I mean, there's tremendous science behind it, okay? However, is it running for you? Is it walking? Is it kickboxing? Is it martial arts? Whatever it is you need to do that fills that need, go do it. Go find it. Go try different things. Everybody's got like a free week trial or whatever. Go try. Find what is your thing and then do it. That is going to help you tremendously. That's number one. Move, walk, find your thing. And then the second thing I would recommend is get a notebook and write down everything. Write down what you're feeling. Write down if you have nightmares or dreams. If you try something, write down when it was. Who did you do it with? How long did you do it? What exactly was it? And then in 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, whatever, go back and look at it and maybe try it again, because you are a different person now and you're in a different place in your recovery, in your journey. And so the same man never steps in the same river twice. You're a different person. Try it again. May not have worked then, but it might work now. So that would be my 2 things. You can't give up. That's not an option. And PTSD and trauma, mental health really requires you to be Sherlock Holmes for yourself. You know, if you get cancer, you get a team of doctors around you that can help put you back together. Mental health, it's kind of not that way. And so you really need to be your own Sherlock Holmes. So that's where that book comes into play. And you really need to figure it out yourself.
Well, and no one else can, right? That's the hardest thing. And, you know, Eric has been an amazing sort of example to all of us about building a healing team, finding the right pieces and bits. And as we're sort of wrapping up here, Anissa, one of the things I really want to tease out of your statement that I think is so important was find the thing. Like, just because, and I think it's so important to highlight that, because here you are saying, this is my thing. It works. And I'm sharing it with the world. I would love for you to come along on this journey and find that this thing is your thing too. But if it isn't, keep going, right? Like, and don't leave a stone unturned. Keep going, keep searching, find that thing, whatever it is. And, you know, the moral of, you know, no man steps in the same river twice. It may not work for you forever. You might have to shift or adjust. And it's so important to understand and know that. I mean, even, you know, Eric has shared his journey of, you know, finding a medication that worked, and, you know, others have used medication that come off and then change. And all of those things together are what allows us, the 3 of us here, to be a little healthier today than we were, you know, a year ago, a day ago, 20 years ago.
Exactly. You know, and towards that end about medication, I love medication. I think that it's a beautiful thing. I'm better living through chemistry. However, Eric, have you heard about GeneSight?
No.
I am a huge proponent of GeneSight, GeneSite. Look it up. You got to Google it. And what it is, it's a swab test. They swab both cheeks. They send it off. A week later, you get your results. It's a pretty thick volume. And it's all mental health drugs. And they break them down into 3 categories. The category, this is the best based on your DNA. And so these results will never change. Based on your DNA, these are the best drugs for you to try.
No kidding. I'm looking at it right now. This is cool.
The middle column is, this may work, it may not work, you know. And then the, oh shit, do not give list.
Nice.
Again, it's based on your DNA. The results will never change.
Amazing.
And so I had it done.
Okay.
And I had been on Zoloft for 10 plus years.
And it had been working.
It was in the middle column. And I was like, well, shit, what if I took something else that worked better? Maybe I could feel better than I do right now. And I did. I moved to a different drug and I do feel better.
Nice.
It's never going to change because it's based on my DNA. It's a wonderful thing. I think that if your insurance doesn't cover it, I think it's $150 out of pocket.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it's
it's well worth it. I'm curious, was there any medication you were on that was on the absolutely do not take column? Very
interesting. So the reason I had this done initially was because I found out about it. My son was having some issues, and we had to put him on a medication. And the doctors, they wanted to put him on, I forgot, I think it was Prozac. And they kept pushing the Prozac. Oh, kids his age have great results, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, I don't want him on it. I don't want him on it. There's just something about it that says, yeah. So we tried the Zoloft first because I was taking it. It didn't sit well with him. And then we tried Wellbutrin. And again, it didn't sit well. And I said, give him the bloody test. We have the technology. What are we doing here? A lot of doctors want to try 2 or 3 meds before they go to this. I don't understand the reasoning behind this.
A lot of it is usually insurance providers' cost. Like there's a ton of, and I'm looking on their website right now because I'm that kind of dork. Medicare Part B covers it fully. So if you have Medicare Part B in the US, fully covered. Medicare Advantage, you'll cover a portion of it. Medicaid is usually zero out-of-pocket cost. Commercial other insurance, it depends. And the most expensive it could be is $330. And so, I mean, I think I'm going to do it, actually.
I am.
Yeah.
So needless to say, we got his results back. And the Prozac that they wanted to put him on was in the oh shit, do not give list.
And you just knew as a mom.
Nice job, Mom.
I like that.
High five, Mom.
Every once in a while, a blind squirrel gets a nut, you know? I was just so grateful. And so in the plus side column, you know, all of the ones but one, he couldn't OD on. So all of the other ones he could OD on. There was only one he couldn't. And that was a problem at the time. And so we said, okay, we're going to put him on that one. So when I got my results, they were almost mirror image, a couple of tweaks. However, the same drug showed up in the plus side column. And I said, you know what? That's the one I'm going to go on because I know we can't OD on it. So if I bring another drug into the house, I know it's going to be safe for him.
Yep.
And I'm still on it.
And you're seeing enough better, you know, it doesn't have to be fully dramatic, but enough better results versus what you were on before. Awesome. That's amazing.
Absolutely. So I highly recommend this.
Very cool.
I'm going to go order one when we get off this call.
That's so cool.
Being somebody who's on 3 different medications and changed dosages and
I am medication resistant in this realm. I've been open about that. I've tried to do whatever I could to not. I guess I can, you know, just admit that I run around the world an unmedicated ADHD person. But at different times, my therapist has thought that it would be helpful, especially when I'm struggling. So, and not something I necessarily need to do all the time. But it'd be interesting, too, as somebody who's not taking medication currently, to do the test and see what it even says. I'm going to check
Absolutely. It out. But again, the results are never going to change.
Yeah.
You're always going to have this. And so you can always walk into any doctor's office and say, here's my report. You know, I really want to try this one.
And it's awesome because, I mean, it really is the cutting edge, right? Like gene therapy, understanding the genetics of how the interplay, like that's where we're headed. You know, this isn't science fiction anymore. This is what we're doing.
Well, it's also super interesting because when you think about a lot of things that are now being tested for physical health, so like the BRCA1 gene, right, with breast cancer.
Yep.
So they're doing all this type of genetic testing that then becomes preventative, and so you have options on the mental health side. Imagine if we started using and developing more and more of these tools so that, you know, when kids were really small, you'd be able to have that test done and know right away, okay, my child is predisposed to such and such and such. And so you begin that process a lot earlier so that people don't have to go through the same journeys that the 3 of us have for as long as we have.
Exactly.
Well said. This took a very interesting turn.
Sorry.
No, we love interesting turns. That's why.
Please do not think that in any way was.
That's what we love about our show.
We don't care. I honestly, both of us, you just made Gene Sight some dope because I'm literally on my iPad, like, all right, I get this.
Yeah. You can start a Monet and it ends up as a Van Gogh. That's how our show works. Sorry about the impressionist, Mark. But,
no. Hey, we got to Van Gogh. I like him.
No, I just think that it is cutting edge technology and it's not being used.
No.
That's what really pisses me off because, you know, as a mom, I watched my son struggle trying to take these drugs and they weren't working. And here we are now. You have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for it to get into your system. And then, you know, where are we? Now we're 4 months, 6 months down the road and the kid is still struggling. That's not fair. Not when we have technology out there that we could just as easily put them on the right thing.
Yep.
It's like, it's a no-brainer. It's literally a no-brainer.
Well, we've unlocked a new discussion point for not only this show, but other shows. I think, Mark, what we should do, it's be kind of interesting, is maybe
share the results.
I was going to say we share this kind of like what Anissa did, and without having to give away, you know, the medications we may or may not be on. You're not on any, but I am. To be able to say, you know, what I'm on right now is, is either in that middle column or the like absolutely yes column. And I'd be curious to see if there's anything in the like absolutely do not take.
So
Yeah, this is a whole new
thing. I love it. I love it. I love it. But before we sign off here, Anissa, where can people find you and find the work you're doing?
TraumahealingYoga.com. And I'm kind of like a bad penny. I just show up everywhere on social media with that.
It's your brand, it's your identity.
Your New York is showing when you say it that way.
Yeah, well, I don't do like TikTok or Snapchat or Clubhouse. I'm not that groovy. I'm kind of old school, but if you go on,
have a TikTok, but we're not good at it. Facebook and Insta are, they're a little bit.
Facebook, Insta and LinkedIn.
Yep.
Pinterest.
Really?
Pinterest.
See, I thought that's just where you went to get learn how to make a lemon drop or crochet something.
All right, so offline we'll talk about it.
And for anybody who just didn't understand that word, it's talk.
We're going to speak, both of us.
But it's talk in New York.
Coffee talk.
Yeah.
Coffee talk. Exactly. So I'm all over TraumahealingYoga.com. And, I would love to be able to help anyone who would like to look at it a little further.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Anything you'd like to add?
No, amazing. I love the conversation. We went to so many different places and just the whole, trauma healing yoga. I'll probably email and speak to you offline, maybe about some things getting involved with Sacred Cycle. Because my two worlds cross over quite a bit with the mental health side and the sexual trauma side. So it's welcome to the From Survivor to Thriver family community. It's been so great. And I'm going to go order my jean site.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. It has been so much fun chatting with you guys. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure is all ours, and we appreciate you. This is Mark Fernandez. A huge thank you to our guests, Anissa Hudak and my co-host, Eric DeRosa, and episode 78 of From Survivor to Thriver. And I will leave us with these words, as I always do. Let's please all be as well as we can. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to our show and leave us a review. Also, we'd love if you could share this episode with a friend and encourage you to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or email via the links in our show notes. See you next week.